Hi, welcome to Pennsylvania Newsmakers, and thanks for watching. Well, it finally happened. Some legislation has been introduced dealing with the governor's energy independence bill. We're going to talk about that, and then a health care update with my friend Dr. Mark Piasio from the Pennsylvania Medical Society. All of that when we return.
This is Pennsylvania Newsmakers, a fast-paced, unrehearsed weekly discussion with and about the leaders who shape your world. And now, here's your host, Terry Madonna.
Hi, welcome back to Newsmakers, and again, thanks for watching. Well, the governor has been off touting since, his budget message in February, his energy independence package. Finally, a group of legislators, mostly Democrats, will find out if there's some partisanship connected to this. They've introduced an energy independence bill. It's pretty complicated. To sort it all out, and I know when we're finished with this discussion you'll understand it, we have John Hanger, who is President and CEO of PennFUTURE, and Gene Barr is Vice President of Governmental Relations for the Pennsylvania Chamber of Business and Industry. Welcome, guys.
Good to be here.
It's great to be here.
All right, well, I know we're going to get to the heart of this because you two guys know a lot about this subject, a lot more than I do. John, let me start with you. The governor has sort of this plan that has a number of features to it, in which the main goal, and you'll straighten me out if I'm wrong, is to do environmentally friendly energy development to create more independence from, certainly where oil is concerned, and the governor's been on talking about this, from our outside foreign oil sources, and create some new jobs in the process. I mean, is that essentially the broad goals of the program?
That's the broad goals of the program. And another way to sort of look at this, we've been doing the same thing over and over again in energy and expecting a different result. It's kind of insane to do that.
Right.
The governor finally has broken the mold here. He's blazing a completely different trail. He's moving the state aggressively into a whole range of new technologies and new businesses. They include solar, methane recovery, alternative fuels to produce electricity. He's also pushing strongly alternative fuels to run our cars and trucks, biofuels. And he's also pushing strongly small investments to help us conserve energy, which will reduce demand and therefore drive down prices in the wholesale electric marketplace. It's a very innovative program. It's vital for the business community in the state, and it's vital for public health and the environment.
Gene, let me talk to you. We're going to get into how it gets done and the taxes and all of that to pay for it. But in general, what has been the reaction of the business community overall to the whole, these three main thrusts of the governor's program that I mentioned at the outset?
Well, I think overall, first off, to go back to what we've historically done, to be honest, whenever we have gone in and mandated and required and heavily regulated energy, we've had fairly disastrous results. When we've gone in and attempted to mandate and invest huge billions of dollars in synthetic fuels, it hasn't worked. The other part of this is a huge amount of borrowing that we financed by an electricity tax that we paid for by everyone across Pennsylvania. And while it might seem small on the surface, in the out years, we're not quite sure how large that will go. We have a strong belief that mandating and regulating whatever market it is leads to greater inflexibility and causes more problems down the road.
Right. Let me ask you this question. I mean, it's obvious that we're in much more of an environmentally friendly environment than we have been in the past. And so is the question that you prefer incentives and the market-driven approaches as opposed to, obviously, to the regulation that you just talked about, what you would consider to be over-regulation?
Well, first let me just say that I don't know that I agree we're at a more environmentally friendly. I think that the United States has always been in the forefront of environmental cleanup and environmental protection. So first off, I would kind of dispute that a bit. But yes,
you can dispute it a lot. That's fine. That's fine.
But I think as we look at this, yes, we've got to look at the market. And one of the things that, unfortunately, the governor has put out, the companies that have been heavily involved in alternative fuel development, alternative energy development, which obviously we support, companies like BP and Shell, the governor has targeted them for a special tax. So he's taking away some of the dollars available for development from companies who have invested the most and have the most, in all honesty, to gain from alternative energy development.
Well, I'm sure John's going to want to respond to this. Go ahead, John.
It sounds like I'm listening to a dinosaur. I say that respectfully as I can. Yes, change is difficult, and what's really refreshing, though, however, is that there are a lot of major businesses on the side of the governor's proposal. Apparently, they haven't talked to Gene yet. BP Solar, for example, is part of a business coalition that PennFUTURE has put together to work on behalf of this program. Gamesa, which is a multi-billion-dollar company that is located in Pennsylvania, has already hired close to 1,000 people, is strongly working for this program. Iberdrola, another new major multi-billion-dollar company that Governor has successfully located in Pennsylvania and that is interested in wind energy development and solar energy development, is working for this program. Conergy, a German company that's located here, is working for this program. There's a long list of biofuel companies, some of them are working right here in the mid-state and others around the state that are strongly in favor of this program. There's a new business group forming. It's sort of like the early stages of the dot-com industry, and it's forming here in Pennsylvania. And I'm hopeful that we'll have a green energy business council, and maybe they'll be part of the chamber, maybe they won't. But I think it's very important to understand that those forward-thinking business leaders are on the side of this package. They understand it is small, powerful investments. It's really only those folks who are locked in the past that are opposed to it.
Gene, you do a lot of, you spend a good bit of time, up on the Hill and the Capitol sort of assessing and working on these things. $850 million in bonds. What has been the general reaction to that? What do you think the prospects are that this will, I mean, when they introduced this legislation, of which this bond package was part of it, the Democrats who sponsored, I noticed they had no Republican sponsors.
Correct.
At least.
Correct.
Does that indicate that there's some...
I think it indicates a lot of concern over $850 million. And despite what John would say, I'll be happy to send him a list of companies who are concerned about a brand new tax stream here in Pennsylvania, as well as many individuals who are concerned about taxes. To go back to this, and part of the concern is we have mandated a market for alternative energy. We are now going to pay people to come in many cases, to do that. And again, we're sending conflicting signals. What is a dinosaur is hoping to keep regulating and mandating and subsidizing our way into prosperity. Opening the market and allowing all kinds of fuels in, developing a comprehensive energy plan, makes a lot more sense than having the government decide who they like to be winners and losers. All
right, we're going to take a break. We're having a great debate here on the future of the governor's energy package. We'll continue with our discussion after these words.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is presented by the Pennsylvania Chamber of Business and Industry, the statewide voice of business. This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is presented by Pennsylvania Medical Society. Doctors and patients, preserve the relationship. And by the Pennsylvania Manufacturers Association. Business in Pennsylvania is our business.
Hi, welcome back to Newsmakers. We're having a debate here about the governor's energy program. It has a variety of parts. There are a bunch of things that I want to get to if we have time, but I want to ask you about these smart meters. As I understand it, they would allow customers to schedule appliance usage at peak times, which would allow for energy savings. And I don't know if this is voluntary or whether it's required, but
what the governor wants to...
By the way, this would involve all the consumers, all our viewers out there. Go ahead.
What the governor wants to do, and by the way, Chris Ross, a Republican from Chester County, is strongly in favor of this. It would require the regulated electric utility, and we still have full regulation of the electric industry at the power line and the home level. In other words, there is no choice of power lines. You have one line to your home, and you have 1 meter in your property. That what the governor would require is that those utilities offer every customer the opportunity to have a smart meter, so that customers can get a whole range of market prices. This is the way of having the market, the competitive market that Gene supports and that I support, flow through to the customer. If they don't have a smart meter, they can't have that market opportunity.
We're willing to look at the cost-benefit of it, obviously. I mean, you take a look at things. Anything that's going to make electric prices more competitive is something, obviously, we're going to have to look at. Again, we're back to having the government make so many of these decisions and mandate the direction is our largest concern with the proposals we've talked about.
Again, on the smart meter, we're talking about mandating a fully regulated monopoly business that is given a monopoly by the state. We're talking about that one line to your property and how that line is going to be structured and how that juice is going to be metered.
But this could potentially involve all consumers, right? I mean, under the legislation, it would be possible for all the consumers.
Yeah, every customer would have the right to ask for a smart meter. They would not have to use it. They could stay with the traditional average pricing, but they could also have alternatives under this
All right,
proposal.
before we leave, I want to ask you guys one other question. I mean,
Sure.
one of the things that we keep hearing, that, you know, with the rising cost of energy all across the board, whether it's natural gas or oil or whatever, is that that's going to lead us into more exploration and more, how do I put it, more investigation into alternative fuels, more actual use of alternative fuels. Gene, in Pennsylvania, where do you think that takes us with the supplies, for example, that we have of natural gas and other?
Sure.
Go ahead.
I think we have to have, as we said earlier, a broad-based approach. And yes, it includes nuclear, it includes coal, it includes oil, it includes wind, it includes solar. It looks at all those and allows the market to make developments in terms of what makes the most sense. I don't know what the energy of choice is going to be in 20 or 25 years. The problem is locking us in from a state policy in terms of what we're going to use. We've got to allow all of those, and we hear from many of our members who say, I've got this idea that I like to use to generate energy, but I can't get approval for it in terms of a permit. We need to be dropping the hurdles for implementations of all energy, but not, again, making winners and losers about how we ought to go.
You would agree with some of that.
We are absolutely in favor of a broad range of technologies. The problem is we have too many eggs in the fossil fuel basket right now. We get most of our energy from oil and coal, and those products have exploded in price.
How about strawgrass?
Well, there are a whole bunch of alternatives that frankly, you know, the President of the United States that's one of his favorites.
Actually, one of my favorites.
And a lot of people's favorites.
We can have this debate on
but I think what's important is you have to make key strategic investments in order to make this transition. And if we don't, we're going to be locked into these fossil fuel prices. We're going to probably see $4 gallon gasoline this summer. We've already seen $10, $15 per 1,000 cubic feet natural gas. We have to transition to these alternatives.
And people are making those key investments. That is exactly the point. People who are looking to get a return are making those investments, and things like the oil company tax detract from that.
Before we go, I want to bring up the nuclear word. You take a country like France, which is what about 80% of its energy comes from nuclear facilities. Again, now there's a big debate in this country about whether we haven't developed, you know, no nuclear facility has been online for what, John, 15 or 20 years, no new ones. Is this something that the environmental community would rule out, that you would say we shouldn't do, that there are enough alternatives, or do you think, given our desire to be free from this dependence on foreign oil, that this is a possibility?
A couple points. Nuclear energy doesn't help us with foreign oil because nuclear energy only produces electricity.
Okay.
We only make about 3% of our electricity from oil. So it doesn't deal with the foreign oil question. The second point is nuclear energy is carbon-free, and the environmental community, many people in the environmental community, certainly PennFUTURE, is looking at all carbon-free options. The thing to understand about nuclear, there's no law against building nuclear. The private sector has been unwilling to do it because it's so costly and the risks of capital
and there's a lot of regulation.
It's very heavily regulated, and it better be heavily regulated. Those French nuclear sites have now got surface-to-air missiles around them. Let's remember that.
All right. Great discussion. When we come back, we're going to have a health care update. We're going to find out about a bill in the legislature that deals with a smoke-free environment in public places. That's something you won't want to miss. We'll be back in a moment.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is presented by the Pennsylvania Credit Union Association, Pennsylvania Credit Unions, where people are worth more than money, and by the Energy Association of Pennsylvania, Pennsylvania's energy information source. This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is presented by the State System of Higher Education, 14 state-owned universities. The state system is the largest provider of higher education in Pennsylvania. And by the Hospital and Health System Association of Pennsylvania, working towards a healthy Pennsylvania.
Welcome back to Pennsylvania Newsmakers. Well, now joining me, as often is the case, is Dr. Mark Piasio. He's the president of the Pennsylvania Medical Society. Doctor, welcome.
Thanks for having me again.
All right, look, this prescription for Pennsylvania has a lot of parts to it. One part we have not talked about on this program, and I really think it's important to do, is the part of the program that deals with what is known as the Clean Indoor Air Act. That's a piece of legislation that's in the state Senate now that would establish a smoke-free indoor public and workplaces. Why should we care about this?
We should absolutely care about this. One thing that makes us very happy at the Medical Society is that both the Senate and the Governor recognize that if you want to reduce some health care costs as well as reduce morbidity and illness, you attack some of the or tackle some of the lifestyle issues that are making us ill. So we're glad that they're taking this on. It's in the long run, we're looking at 53,000 people die every year from secondhand smoke. It's a Class A carcinogen up there with asbestos and formaldehyde.
I was going to say, I mean, we don't think about this, but this is rated by the EPA, Environmental Protection Agency, in the same vein, let me put it that way, as these other carcinogens, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. And it's always been frustrating for us as physicians. We're told, you know, what are you doing about stopping your patients from smoking? I said, well, everything we can, but it still continues. So we look at this bill as whether it's the Senate bill or through prescription for Pennsylvania, as one of the real highlights of what we're trying to do in the state. But actually, if you look at the states around us, for the first time, we're behind. Yeah. We are one of the few still remaining that allows smoking in a lot of indoor places.
Now, I mean, we don't. I mean, you're a physician. You deal with this, even though you're an orthopedic physician. But your colleagues in, you know, that deal with lung problems and what else? Respiratory illnesses of all kinds. Plus, the children who are exposed to this in their you know, even in their homes. Now, I know this doesn't regulate homes, but minimizing the effect that smoke has on kids everywhere ought to be I mean, that seems to me ought to be a prime policy goal,
Absolute priority, particularly when you look at the money we've taken from the tobacco industries in the past for smoking cessation. I think this helps in that direction, going that way. We've got 300,000 kids a year with pulmonary problems that we think is related to secondhand smoke. I don't know what upsets you more, seeing a car drive by and people smoking in the car with kids in the back seat. I mean, that's very disturbing. But what you were mentioning earlier, even as an orthopedist, you would think that smoking would not be an issue for us, but as we're studying things as we go forward, smoking is one of my major issues because bones don't heal and tendons don't heal when you smoke.
Think about that.
So if you, let's say you're in a major trauma and your tibia breaks, trying to get that to heal in a smoker can sometimes be close to impossible. So certain spine fusions, surgical rates are 15% successful versus 85 to 95 when you don't. So we're finding out that tobacco use has more than just lung cancer.
Yeah, well, at any rate, we've and all the times, you know, you've been on the program, we've had other physicians on talking about medical. I don't know why we haven't done this, but I think it's an important thing for us to do, you know, to at least bring this out. And I noticed that there are still some exemptions. I mean, private homes are exempt, wholesale or retail tobacco shops. I mean, I know that a lot of folks who watch this program may play golf, you know, and they want to know if they could still smoke a cigar, for example, out on a golf course. So there are some limits on that would apply to the law or in the law, correct?
I think a golf course may be okay, but they are looking at more the indoor establishments where there are going to still be a few exceptions if you are a retail tobacco business where the majority of your sales are tobacco, that you'll still be allowed to smoke there.
All right, there are other elements in the governor's prescription for PA program. We're going to talk about those, a couple of important ones that will concern you when we return.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is presented by Highmark Blue Shield, changing the way health plans work for business with a variety of plan options for employers and more choices for employees. Information is available at highmark.com. Have a greater hand in your company's health. And by the Pennsylvania Healthcare Association, the future of long-term care. This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is presented by the Pennsylvania Builders Association, building today for a better tomorrow. And by the Pennsylvania Cyber Charter School, bringing educational innovation and freedom to the children of Pennsylvania.
Hi, welcome back to Pennsylvania Newsmakers with Dr. Mark Piasio, the president of the Pennsylvania Medical Society. We're talking about Governor Rendell's, and I call this, Doctor, his ambitious prescription for PA. Would you agree with that?
I think so. I think that's a fair assessment, but a good one.
Yeah. I mean, I think we've had most of the people.
Ambitious is a good thing.
Yeah. Well, no, nothing wrong with that. I mean, most of the folks we've had on, there's been disputes about, how we're going to pay, for example, for the 850,000. Governor wants to cover 850,000 people or so who aren't insured. Everybody agrees we ought to do it. They don't always agree on how to pay for it.
Right.
But let's, of these things in here, what do you think are kind of the interesting aspects of this program from the medical society's point of view?
Well, what I'm very happy that he did is that he and his team recognize that there are no little silver bullets to trying to fix a healthcare system. It's a huge, huge undertaking. And I think they're trying to balance how much can we do and still do, and maybe keep going and do things later without having it so big that we get so much obstruction that we never get anywhere, which seems to be what's happening on a national basis. But we're happy that he's trying to find a responsible way to get the uninsured insured. He understands that is a drain on the system, not to mention that these patients, they're our friends and neighbors, don't have access to health care, which they should. So we're very happy about that. We think he's done a pretty good job of trying to find a reasonable way to finance it that's not too painful. We're very happy with his with taking on, as we mentioned earlier, some healthy living initiatives. I know one of them is going to be smoking, and there's going to be more to follow, and we're very happy with that. His willingness to develop a Center for Health Career or Health Resources, we think is an excellent idea. There's always a lot of debate around the periphery on what's really happening in the state, and now we're going to hopefully have some repository where we can really study our healthcare demography and find out what's working, what's not, and how do we improve the system. So we're happy that that's in the bill. Anything that has to do with patient safety, that's very core to us. We're patient advocates, and in looking at trying to reduce hospital-acquired infections, finding ways to do it, we recognize that this is actually something that we can do. So the fact that that's in there, we're very happy about that. And some of the transparencies in pricing, which gets, maybe it's on your show, it's been more noticed, but I certainly noticed it, that if you want to really reform your healthcare system, you got to get a good grip on your costs and where your money flows. And I think he's trying to do that, and we're happy about that too.
And that might well be something that really has to be done because the federal government, through the big Medicare and Medicaid programs, sets so many of those fees. But a lot of patients aren't even aware of what things cost. Even you get a bill or somebody else is paying some insurance.
We aren't aware half the time of what things are costing or what things are being paid for. So when you're looking at a process that's so big and so expensive with so many dollars moving, particularly when the premiums in Pennsylvania are becoming very, very high, some of the highest in the country, we really got to find a way to make health care affordable, and that's a good step towards it.
All right, my guest has been Dr. Mark Piasio, President of the Pennsylvania Medical Society. Great guest. You're always welcome on this program.
Thanks so much.
We'll see you next week for another edition of Pennsylvania Newsmakers, and I always say this, stay well.